In this video, we're going to see an example of how to work with arrays in Java, and we'll also see an example of how to create a brand new class inside of Eclipse. So in Eclipse, if you want to create a new class, go to your project, and I already have an existing project with some packages, and I'm going to add an arrays class to the Java review package. So I'll right click and then select new and then class. And that'll give me some options here. I'm going to call my class arrays, and the superclass I can leave alone, the interfaces leave alone. A lot of these things we'll talk about later in the semester, and I am going to want to add automatically a main method in there, so I'll click on that as well. So when I click finish, you see I get this empty array. There is a constructor, which I'm not going to need in this case, so I'll delete that. And it sets up the package statement for me, indicating that this is from module 0 in the Java review package. And then here's my main method. So if I wanted to do a print statement here, and then I can run this code by clicking the play button, and you can see that it prints array example. So now let's go ahead and set up some array variables. And we're going to work with just integer arrays in this example, but I can have arrays of any type that exists in Java. So I give it the type name and then an empty set of brackets indicating that this is an array. So this is not saying I have an integer. This is saying I have an integer array. I'm going to call it nums, and it's going to be a new integer array of 10 integers. And this will be an empty array at this point, and we'll show you how you can set some values there. I can also declare an integer array with an initializer. I'll call this more nums. And the initializer is a set of braces with comma separated values inside of them. So there's my two array variables. So if I want to add numbers to the nums array, I need to use a for loop. So I'll start with 0. That's the first element in an array is index 0. And that might be confusing, but if you think about it, where is the first number located in the array? It's not in array 1. That's 1 past the start of the array. It's index 0, which would be where the array starts. And we'll say I is less than nums.length. Now, nums I know is 10, so why not use 10 here? Well, because what if I change this number? I would have to change it anywhere else. So it's ideal to avoid using literals as much as possible. And in this case, I can get the length of the array anytime by giving the array name dot length. And then I'll increment my loop counter. I sometimes get asked why I use II as my index variable, and the reason is pretty simple. It's just because it's easier to search for II than it would be just I. So that's where that comes from. And at this point, it's habit, so I just do it out of habit, but that's where that habit started. So to initialize each member of the array, I say nums II. So again, as each iteration of the loop goes, this will start at 0, then 1, then 2. It'll never get to 10 because this says II has to be less than the length of the array, and that's 10. So it has to be less than 10, which is 9, and 0 through 9 gives me the 10 indices in the nums array. And I'll just set each of those to be II. Now, if I want to change what one of the values is in the array, I can just say nums, then give it the index 5, for example, 5, and say that that's equal to 30. If I want to say index 0, I can do that. I can do any index I want as long as it's a valid index of the array. So I couldn't do something like nums 100. If I did this, you can see I get an error that it says index 0 is out of bounds for length 10 array. So now I'm going to print the nums array. I'm going to do it on one line. separated by a space. So again, I'm going to have a loop. And you'll notice I have to declare this variable anew because it only has scope inside the actual loop. So this, as soon as this loop is done, II doesn't exist anymore. So when I come down here and want to use it again, I need to redeclare it. And then to print out the elements of the array, and I'll add a space at the end to separate them by a space. And then once I'm done, I'm going to print line and empty line. Or actually, this will be a new line at the end of the single line that the numbers are printed on. So I'm going to add an extra new line here so that I get a new line at the end of this print statement, and then I get an empty line before I print some more stuff. So I'm going to print the more nums array. With this, I'm going to do one number per line. So I say system out print line, and then I'm going to have a for loop. Check the length of that array. And then I'll print more nums II. However, I don't want a quote there. Although, just to give a little bit of indentation, I'll print 2 lines at the start, then I'll print more lines. And since I'm using print line instead of print, this will actually give me a new line at the end of each. And then to get a blank line at the end of my output, I'll do another print line. So let's run this. And so there you can see there's nums and there's more nums. I will add some comments to this file, but I think for now that's pretty sufficient. This actually covers a lot of how we'll use arrays. We'll use loops to go through the entire array, and we'll access individual elements.